Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our speech today about ISO 20022 migration and easing the pain for North America by learning Europe's lessons. My name's Paul Ruskin. I am the Business Development Director at Trace Financial, and I am very, very thrilled to welcome Kjeld from Azzana Consulting, who, in my opinion, is one of the best oracles on ISO 20022. I will let him do his own introduction, but thank you very much for joining me, Kjeld.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I'm not sure about being an oracle about ISO 20022, but I'm certainly glad to have a chat with you about the topic and to see what we've done with some of our customers in Europe and what the Canadian audience can learn about that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got between 45 minutes and 50, so we should be able to solve every problem in this space in that and still have time to talk, shoot the breeze about something else. Actually, before we go on, Kjeld, can you just give us a bit of background what Azzana does and why you're important? You won't say this because you're very modest, but why I think you're important in this conversation and who you're talking to.
Yeah, fantastic. So Azzana Consulting is a boutique consulting firm. We're specialized in payments and cash management. Right now, we don't have any branches in North America yet, but we do have branches in most of Europe and in Southeast Asia. And essentially, we help customers in all their payments and cash management challenges. So that goes from corporate customers, so corporate treasuries who are looking to leverage the new possibilities that rich payments are providing. We're also helping banks. We're helping fintechs. We work together with Swift as well. And finally, we're also helping some clearing and settlement mechanisms in their challenges. So in that journey, we've talked to everyone kind of involved in the payments chain and learned about what their pains are and what their expectations are around ISO 20022 and around the migration. So yeah, obviously in Europe we've had a little bit of a head start with Target 2, the European RTGS, which is migrating. Originally, it was foreseen for 2021. Then COVID happened and everything got pushed back a year. So now we're aiming for 2022. But most banks are really starting to get a clear picture of what it is they're going to do. And then in parallel, of course, we have the migration in correspondent banking. And we have a lot of European banks that are also looking at migrating as early as possible, as from 2022, since they need to do it for Target anyways. So they're also looking at bringing in the CBPR plus migration as soon as possible. So yeah, I want to give some feedback from the customers, share some things that went well, some things that went perhaps a little bit less well, and to help everyone, regardless of what your role is, whether you're a fintech, whether you're a bank, try to figure out what the best approach is to this migration.
I think that's key, and as I said, I work on the vendor side, so most of my waking life is talking about ISO 20022 to global customers with completely different initiatives, and everyone will have their own story, everyone will have their own opinion, but I think at the moment what I'd like to get out of this session, and me and Kjeld talk quite a bit about this is a safe space. There are no stupid questions, because that's what I think a lot of issues I found when I talk to customers, and even just friends, well, not friends who talk about ISO 20022, but work friends who talk about this, is that you're kind of almost worried about asking a stupid questions, like, if I should already know this now, I feel bad if I ask it. I do not agree with that at all. It should always be a nice safe space that everyone can discuss, because we all need to help each other get to somewhere. And I'm more than happy to talk to other vendors about certain things, because we're all in this together. And with external factors in the world globally, everyone does really need to be kind and helping each other at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little bit of background of why we've called this session this way. Before I do that, just a very quick thing about myself. I've been at Trace Financial now 22 years. So I've seen a lot of change in the payment space and in the transformation space, but I've never seen anything like this. And it has really shook the entire industry. And I think there's still quite a few pitfalls that people might fall into by the time November 2022 comes around. So when we were offered to talk at Payments Canada, I contacted Kjeld and said, look, why don't we do a talk about ISO 20022? Because what else are we going to do? And I originally said, right, there's no point in us talking about Target 2 and Euro 1 because that won't affect North America. And Kjeld had an excellent point in that actually this does affect North America, because what you should be doing now is looking at Europe and what the pitfalls are, what problems people have, because it is coming your way. If you'd like to expand on that, Kjeld, because I thought that was an excellent reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason I think it's interesting to talk about Europe, because I guess we had to go through it a little bit faster than most of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Even going back further in history, we had the SEPA migration, so where you had kind of all these domestic clearings that had their own formats, and then everyone got to an ISO 20022 format for the low value payments, the single European payment area. But that's already ancient history. That's something most bankers have forgotten about as well. And then now, yeah, obviously, banks have really come quite far in there, thinking about the migration of Target 2, thinking about how they're going to interact with their vendors, thinking about how they're going to deal with messaging, thinking about change management internally as well. A big one that's often overlooked, and really starting to devise an architecture and a clear roadmap of how they're going to be ready for ISO 20022.
Yeah, no, I think it's key at the moment that you can never start this too early.
Mm-hmm.
With Lynx, Natcha, Fedwire in North America all migrating, there is a tendency to go, well, we'll just see what happens in Europe first, and then we'll tackle it. And I don't think there's an early enough time to start looking at this, because again, it's in so many different places. ISO 20022. Is it a technology problem? Is it a data problem? Is it an analyst problem? It's like, yes, it is. It's all of those things. And for someone like me who speak to my customers and my potential customers, a very common question that's kind of shrouded a bit is, what's everyone else doing?
Yeah.
It's almost like a security blanket. It's like, what are other people doing? And you must have the same thing with your customers.
Absolutely. But maybe before getting into that, I want to pick up on a specific word you used.
Go on.
You said the word problem, I think 3 times, and I think
I did, didn't I? Yeah, you're right. Go on.
I think that's quite telling. It's the way a lot of financial institutions see this migration. It's a problem. It's something they need to deal with. They didn't ask for it. But I think if we take a step back, it's interesting to look at it not only as a problem, but also as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's going to require investment, significant investment. If we're looking at the European market, it's been the average bank. It's been around 100 million euros investment to do this migration. For the larger banks, it's up to 100 million euros. So it's very significant. It's also a change driver for a lot of banks to reconsider, getting rid of the old mainframe and going for a more modern approach. But yeah, huge budgets are going to this. Yeah. But it's not just something that we have to do, but something that creates new opportunities. Maybe we can look into a couple of those opportunities before really diving into the technical ways of addressing it. So I think one of the big opportunities is that you have much richer and more structured data. Now, what does that mean, structured data? It means that you're capable of automating things and capable of improving your straight-through processing rates. As we know, if you're going to look in your bank at the cost of processing a straight-through transaction compared to a transaction that you need to repair at some point, or that's going to have a compliance hit, it's a world of difference. You can do at least 100 straight-through payments for the cost of one payment that gets held up somewhere. And having the structured data is something that's a huge opportunity. For example, if we're going to look at addresses or creditor and debtor information, just the fact that you're able to put structured addresses in there, and that you have for example, the word Cuba, not in a field that could be related to the country Cuba. But if we have some customers, we have quite a big office in Paris, and in Paris there's a street that has actually a lot of businesses called Rue du Cuba. So it's a street called Cuba Street in Paris. And of course, that's a nightmare for banks because almost all those transactions are going to be held up by sanction screening. Why? There's the word Cuba that's in the field that's potentially related to the country. Whereas now in ISO, if we have structured data, we're going to see that the country tag is France and that Cuba is in the street name tag. So that's going to allow us to avoid some false positives. So on compliance side, I think there's a big advantage. And I'm not even talking yet about opportunities for other structured data like legal identifiers and things like that you can put in the information as well. So if you just look at it as a problem, what's the minimum I need to do? What are you going to do? You're just going to make sure that you're capable of doing the message. If you look at it as an opportunity, then perhaps you can think as well, maybe we can go beyond our simple, screening field by field and make our screening solutions a little bit more intelligent. Think more about, what opportunities this provides. Well, what you're going to see is that your STP rates are going to improve, your operating costs are going to decrease, and you're going to have more satisfied customers because you just aren't going to have as many payments to repair or that are going to be held up in your compliance departments.
And that's a really excellent point especially about the Cuba part. And it's kind of sparked something in my mind about this is actually a journey. By the time November comes around next year, it's not like we're done, we're finished with this yet. And I remember when we were talking last time, a couple of weeks ago, about this, is that it's great. For example, I love this. The name and address is always my favorite bit of this. My favorite part of this is because, in Swift, it's 4 times 35 characters. And they're starting getting it more structured with the numbers at the front, which is great. But when I do speak to customers, and as you said, if Cuba comes up in the second line, it's like, you're going to need quite a bit of logic to make sure it's not the country, or is it the street, or is it the province, or whatever it is. And at the moment, when it comes to a bank or a financial institution processing this information, it's great you can have this structured data. But if you haven't got the infrastructure behind it to actually store that data, then it's kind of a bit useless. You're just kind of parroting something in the middle, but not using it. And I think that's kind of your point about it as well. I know when I've mentioned the word journey in the CBPR plus rules, when it comes to this 4 times 35 characters, they're just using a repeating field in the ISO. They're not expecting you to understand where the city is or the province or the building number is, but that's the journey that we eventually get to, and we can get that way. So I think I actually wanted to get your opinion on this. Yes, it's brilliant for structured data, but you do need to have something in the back end to be able to understand that and store that information.
Absolutely. Store it and processing it. So I think the first step is really processing it, looking at your transaction flow and removing any bottlenecks that you're going to have there. And then if you want to take it, in the next step, as you say, in the journey, you really need to store that data and store it in a way that's logical and usable. That allow you to, improve your services as well, because you can run business intelligence on that rich data that you previously didn't have and allow you to make better business decisions. For example, if you see, you might be a smaller Canadian bank and you see you have a ton of payments going towards the US, you might be considering we should perhaps expand to the US market and start opening a branch there. If you have structured data like postal codes and whatnot, you can figure out, do I want to open that branch in New York, or do I want to open a branch in San Francisco? Where do we start with this?
The reason I was going to stop you is we need to stop talking about this, because I've just had a great idea. We're going to start our own business, because that payment analysis that you've just mentioned, before you start mentioning, this is a great business model. We just put payment analysis on this ISO 2002, and then, as you said, you can find out where all your payments are going, what's being stopped, what's being rejected, and then you can start targeting that. That is going to be we're quoting this already, but this is going to be the next iteration of software in about 3 years' time to work out. And we all know data's king. We've all seen the film The Social Network. Data is king at the end of the day. People want as much analysis on this data as they can get. And that's a fantastic. I've never thought about it until you just mentioned that Cuba part, and then you start sort of almost going on top of that and go, actually, you can do so much more analytics.
So you have that data for starters when it comes to your payment. So here we're talking about your PAX 8, PAX 9, your simple straight through payments. Another thing that's going to get a lot more structured is everything that's related to case management, everything that's related to recalls. Now, again, that gives you data insights. Why are we doing recalls? Why are other banks recalling payments that we're receiving? Is there something we need to pay attention to there? Because you're going to have structured reasons as to why payments are getting recalled. On top of that, because you now have these structured messages that are coming in, you can automate that process as well. You can say, okay, if we get a recall in, we haven't credited the customer yet, and you can set up rules that way. You know exactly what the reason is of the recall. For example, if it's a customer mistake, you're going to send the cancellation back immediately. If it's recall for reasons of fraud, you might want to hold on to the funds a little bit, figure out what's happening before sending it back. So you can have fine-tune those rules, and you can automate a lot as well. So when it comes to back office processes, there are certainly capabilities as well that are introduced by stepping away from, traditionally this is MT195, MT199, unstructured. It's dear sir, madam, with reference to our payment of the 12th of June. You can't do anything with that. But now you get a very neat message saying, recall, these are the payment references. Yeah. This is the specific reason that we want to recall it. And then you can answer in a structured way as well, saying, yes, we'll return it, and here's the return payment, or no, we're not going to return it because.
It's almost a generational thing. Like, I'm aware of my age, but I quite like the 199, where it says, the story began on a rainy Wednesday morning, and the current judge, I don't care, just tell me why it went wrong and tell me where I need to do next. And yeah, it's right. It's the best way of doing it. And it is, and you know what? Now you've described all this, I feel bad about using the word problem. It's the last time I'm going to use the word problem, just because that's why I hear from everyone. It's a problem. I've got to do this, and it hasn't helped. Sorry, I'm going a very quick sort of segue. It hasn't helped with external factors that all of this work has come aboard when the world is not in the most tip-top place at the moment, and it's just this perfect storm of there's a lot to do, not a lot of time. I did want to, because another part of the rich data, another part of why ISO 20022 does bring a lot more value is, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, is the bulking of messages now. For Swift MT, it was single payments. Pax and Pay now, you can get these multiple payments. That must be a good thing, surely.
Yes, if you're large enough.
There's a buck coming here.
So I'm a little bit divided on this. So I think the capability of doing it is going to be very useful. It's going to be very rich. Who is it for, though? Who's going to make use of it? That's my question. Yeah. If we look at the smaller banks, they're not necessarily going to have the volumes that make it worthwhile bulking. And their Swift costs are going to be relatively minor. So the advantage that they're going to get of bulking their payments in terms of Swift cost isn't going to be huge. You have the largest financial institutions as well. I mean, take like a JP Morgan and a HSBC who are going to be exchanging massive amounts of payments between each other. For them, bulking could be interesting. You'd think they could save on Swift costs that way. However, most of those customers are on fixed price contracts with Swift. So that means Swift bills them the same thing regardless of how many payments they send out. Sure. So actually, they're not going to benefit much from bulking either. So there's kind of that Goldilocks zone where you're large enough where it's going to have an impact on your Swift costs, but not that large that you're going to have a fixed price contract with Swift. So I think it's certainly a compelling opportunity. It's something to investigate. However, I'm not yet entirely convinced of who this is for. But it's interesting, Paul. Maybe do you have customers that have expressed interest about these bulking capabilities?
Oh yes, without a doubt. Yes. We did a lot of development when it came to the ability to process large files, because it's not I want to do this on day one, but I want to have at least the option to do it. And so again, you're absolutely right. It's the large institutions that are asking us about the large bulking, and then we're sort of, we're showing how easy it is to do. And the smaller institutions, like, I don't want bulking files. Please don't send me that. This is before I turn up. But what they're currently looking at is, if they give me bulking files, I'll look at the first one and then ignore the rest. Obviously, that's simple to change. Don't get me wrong. But and I can't imagine this scenario, but there may be an FI somewhere in the world who just goes, it'll be fine. I've got until another 5 years till they turn off MT for 1, 2, and 9. It should be all right. So here's a safe space question, Kjeld. If I am one of these institutions that are thinking, I've got 5 years, I'm going to be retiring in 3, I'll let my next person organize this. When it comes to next November and I get JP Morgan sending me something and it's bulked, what do I do? Panic?
Yeah, perhaps. Now, my understanding, and Paul, I know you're more intimately familiar with the specifics of messaging than
I don't like the word intimate, but go on.
But what my understanding was about bulking is that, yes, the messaging does allow for bulking, but from what I've seen on the standards website and whatnot, it seems that that's only on bilateral agreement.
Yes.
So I wouldn't expect a bank to just randomly start sending you bulk payments. And I think the bank that does start doing that, they'll quickly see that they'll get a lot of rejected payments, and they'll come back on that decision. So I wouldn't be too worried about that per se.
Right. That was unfair. I do apologize. That was a question, and for everyone watching, this is unscripted. I've got a few notes that I look at. I don't mean to put Kjeld on the spot, but I also want to show, because obviously we've had 15 minutes so far, so you should know that he knows a lot about this, but this is what you get during these calls. What am I going to do about this, Kjeld? How do I do this? And no one knows everything, but you at least, and you're right, it's a bilateral agreement.
Yeah. But you are touching on a very interesting point here, and something that's also one of the key lessons learned, especially if you're going to be looking at correspondent banking and the CBPR plus migration, is start talking to your correspondent banks today.
Yeah.
Figure out, are they going to be ready? Are they going to be capable of receiving all of the different fields? Are they capable of receiving bulking? What are the little specificities? Even today in MT world, every correspondent bank wants a slightly different flavor of MT 103. The same applies to ISO. Figure out which currencies, which specifics you're going to need to look at, and really engage with your correspondent banks. I think it's a relatively safe assumption that the larger correspondent banks, so kind of your global transaction banks, will be ready to go full ISO as of 2022.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for it, talk to them, verify, but they should be ready. But you have a bunch of exotic currencies as well that you need to deal with. And if you have relationships with correspondent banks for exotic currencies, talk to them, figure out whether they're going to be ready. It could even be if they're completely not ready for the migration, and you start sending them ISO messages, they're not going to know what to do with it, and they're going to return your payments. Ideally, and most of the banks that I'm advising now, I tell them, try to go full ISO from 2022. Why? It makes your life and the life of the people working in the back office that much easier. You don't want to see, a customer calls you, I made a mistake with a payment, I need to cancel it, and then need to figure out, okay, do I need to send a MT 195 or do I need to 192? Sorry, do I need to send an MT 192 or do I need to send a CANT or what?
Yeah.
Make it simple. Make everything ISO based, but verify with your correspondents that they're ready for it, and verify what the specificities are in the messaging that they're going to want.
I think that passes me by as a vendor, because I speak to my customers, but I forget the banks have to actually talk to each other and, like, what are you sending me? And what am I going to be sending you? And that is key. And it's something that I don't have a lot of visibility on. I don't sit between the two banks and talk to each other. But what you touched on there, I did want to expand on about the variances when it comes to CBPR plus. And it's one of the first questions I get when I talk about our CBPR plus mapping solution is it extendable? Is it restrictable? Is it is it basically, can you override it and put something else that I need from bank A that wants something specific for their remittance information, which is not part of CBPR plus? And I joke with some people that it's ISO 2082. It solves everything, isn't it? That's the point. But it doesn't, because you get all this extra, and don't even get started on supplementary data. That's another completely different story and a different. I don't want to get involved in that. But again, you've got that extensibility that people can start changing it. Are you finding that in your talks as well, that people are, well, these are the CBPR plus rules. Where was my hand going? Let's go that way. And then I want to do 10% for bank A, and then bank B wants 5%. And then is that something you're seeing as well?
Absolutely. There's always, a degree of nuance in messaging. So you've got your CBPR plus framework. And then what you have to keep in mind is that when it comes to correspondent banking, most of those messages are going to be sent over the SWIFT network. So in this case, it's going to be Fin Plus, or what many of you might know as Interact. Almost the same thing, but there are some validation rules that are in place on Fin Plus. So you need to be able to respect those validation rules, and you need to stay within the confines of those validation rules. But within that envelope of your CBPR plus rules, you have a lot of fields that are optional. And you can say to a bank, even though it's optional, I need it to process those payments. And that's going to really depend country by country as well. Like today in the remittance information, if you send a payment going towards India, for example, their central bank has a list of codes related to the economic underlying reason of the payment. Now you need to have that in the remittance information. Again, this is something that's going to be reused in ISO, except now it's not just cramming everything into remittance information. Everything's kind of got its own specific fields. So you need to take into account that, obviously you've got CBPR plus for your correspondent banking, but then when your payment arrives at the bank of the beneficiary country, often it's still going to need to go over some high value payment system or some domestic payment system for the payment to actually arrive at the beneficiary. Mm-hmm. And if your correspondent bank doesn't have sufficient information to do that domestic leg and to send the payment over the high value payment system within the country, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have inquiries, you're going to have held up payments, you're going to have cancellations. And Paul, do forgive me, I'm going to plug our website for a second as well.
Please, no, I was hoping you would. I was going to.
We've actually developed a website called ISO2022migration.com. And it's a website, you'll see it has a world map showing which countries are migrating at what point in time. And you can also look into the specificities of the messaging of each country, where they're available. So if you have flows going to specific countries, have a look at that website, figure out when they're going to be migrating, what type of data those payments are going to require, and sit down with your correspondents and figure out, I need to be doing US dollar payments towards India. How am I going to do this? What's the sum of requirements? It's going to go over 2 different high value payment systems. It's going to go through the correspondent banking network, and we need to find some flavor of ISO that's going to fit everyone. And I'm going to take this opportunity as well to plug your solution, Paul. And I think Trace Financial Transformer is very adapted to that as well, because it really allows you to customize those mappings. And I think that's probably one of the big things that your customers are going to need to do, that are relying on this transformation software, is to configure and figure out those mappings specifically for their correspondence and for their payment corridors.
Yes, it is music. Yes, it does fit into our capabilities very well, and it's nice and graphical. But I'm not going to. This is meant to be helping. So I do appreciate the plug, but I meant this is meant to be 45 minutes of me not sort of saying how great I am. So let's But you did mention a couple.
For you then, Paul.
Thank you so much. You're too kind. There are a couple of things I wanted to pick up on there, because you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to, you've mentioned variance in the sense of what. And this is a question I get quite a lot. And sometimes people don't ask me this question, and I always want to ask them you do realize when you say PAX and pane, PAX 8 and pane 1, you've got 3 numbers at the end of it as well. It's not always the same version.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm just going to touch wood, I haven't seen much problems with this. Okay, everyone seems to be going for the same version of the PAX 8 and the pane 1 and all the different ones. But I'm guessing as we go forward, there are going to be some initiatives who are going to stick on their original version 8, version 9, whatever it's going to be. And then when the new initiative comes in, they can say, other people will say, oh, we can start using this. It's got extra fields in there. That's the feeling I'm going to get. So it is going to be a pressure point for companies to go, I've got this MT103 at PAX 8 version 8, then these guys want version 9. Do you think that's going to be the same, or am I being too cautious?
Yeah, so I think you can run into issues with versioning, but even within the same versioning, you can have different requirements. To take a very concrete example, and coming back to the lessons learned from Europe, we touched base earlier about bulking payments, and that's something that's possible in CBPR Plus in correspondent banking.
Mm-hmm.
Target 2 doesn't accept bulk payments. So whereas they're using the same format of PAX 8 as CBPR Plus is in correspondent banking. So it's the same format, same version.
Yeah.
Within Target 2, it's the number of credit transfers is 1.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it comes to CBPR Plus, it's 1 or more.
Yeah.
So it's the same version, but not the same payment message.
Yeah. No, it's very key. And the second point, and I'm going to limit us to 4 minutes on this, and I'm going to tell a horror story where I'm going to set the scene. Heading: data truncation, everyone's favorite, and what to do about it. We're not going to solve this. No one will ever solve this. So the scene is basically in MT you have a certain amount of characters, and in MX 2082, whatever you call it, you have another certain amount of characters, and those two don't match. So if you're trying to ram in some remittance information into a field in 2022 and it goes too long, you have to strip one character out, put a plus sign at the end and go, it's been truncated. I don't know what the rest of it said. So what and I know I've made that very simple. There's obviously a lot more nuance to it, but that's a nice high level. What I have heard one person mention in the industry was, well, there's lots of optional fields in ISO. Just truncate that data and we'll find a random field, put the rest of it in, and then you can have your, payment system or whatever is the other end, just glue it back together. I was like, yes, technically you can do that. But I really wanted to get your opinion on this, Kjeld. Is the data truncation, again, am I being overly cautious here? And it's just, I'll be all right, Paul, don't worry about it. Or you do really need to look at this?
It's something that you really do need to look at.
I knew you'd say that. It doesn't affect me. I don't deal with it. I deal with the transformation part, but I want to get your opinion.
So the first thing that you need to deal with truncation is compliance aspects.
Yeah.
If you're truncating data, and keep in mind that we have new fields that didn't exist and can't be mapped to an MT, like ultimate debtor, ultimate creditor. Yeah. And those are payment party fields. You need to screen them. You need to do sanction screening on them. If you just chuck them out and say, you know what, we're going to process it as we do today and ignore the fact that those exist, well, you could be sending a payment to an ultimate beneficiary that's on the sanctions list. And that's not going to end up very well for you. So you have sanction screening. We talked earlier about data storage and business intelligence and what you can kind of run on having that data. How are you going to deal with that? If you don't have it in your systems, you can't do anything with it. And then I think the last part is, because obviously with a solution like Transformer, what you can do is as well translate on the incoming side, translate again on the outgoing side, and just isolate your systems from the impact, which is good if you're willing to take a little bit of risk, if you're willing to do that for the time being, a good enough solution, if you will. But one of the issues that you're going to run into on translating it again on outbound side is what happens when you have conflicts. Let's say you had a structured address on incoming side, you translate it to unstructured, and then the payment gets blocked somewhere in your processing. You repair the payment and you modify the address.
Yeah.
You then need to transform it back into an ISO payment on outbound side, and you say, hey, what we had on inbound side here in terms of address, it doesn't correspond to the unstructured address we've got now. Which one do you take? You have a conflict there, so you need to think about, what's the golden source. You can manage it. There's ways of going about it. With compliance, if you see a plus, go into your alliance system or whatever it may be to find the original message screen and verify that manually. There are workarounds, but you need to think about all those workarounds, and you need to think about all the implications. Certainly, if you're a smaller bank, a translation solution can be very fitting. Even in the long run, it can work. But you need to think about all the implications of using translating software. Another example, so this is actually not a smaller bank, but a larger one, a larger Luxembourgish bank that we've worked with. And they were implementing a new core banking system. And that new core banking system is going live in 2023. It's a project that they've been working on for quite a while. So obviously they need to bridge that gap between November 22 and the time their core banking goes live. Well, we're 21 now, it's scheduled for 23, so realistically it'll be 25, but it doesn't make sense to...
So pessimistic. I'm not disagreeing, I'm just...
it's the reality that banks are often faced with, but it doesn't make sense to put in something, a whole new renewal, to do an enormous project when you're going to chuck it all out in 2 years anyways. But still, you need to think about the compliance impacts. You need to think about these conflicts of when you're translating on either side. And finally, you need to think about customer experience. That's a big one as well, because now so far we've talked about the interbank space, but we also need to think about corporate to bank and bank to corporate. Now, let's say we have a payment initiation that's happening using ISO 20022. So using a pane one to initiate the payment, and our corporate who's initiating the payment, he's top of his class. He's very well prepared, state-of-the-art ERP system, state-of-the-art TMS. He's going to fill in all the data. He's going to have extended remittance information. He's going to have ultimate debtor, ultimate creditor, so the beneficiaries can reconcile easily. He's going to have structured addresses, so that way he makes sure that correspondent banks aren't going to block the payment. And then you as bank, you receive that payment instruction, you're going to translate it, lop everything that doesn't fit into an MT off, and you're going to send it out through to your correspondent. Now, your correspondent might block the payment. Why? Because, even though you had nicely structured data to start off with, it's unstructured. Good luck explaining to that to the corporate, saying, thank you for doing everything correctly, but we weren't capable of passing out along that information. So our correspondents are going to block the payment. Your payment's going to be held up. Your beneficiary is ultimately going to get paid, but he's not going to have the extended remittance information, and he's going to need to call you up to figure out what your payment is about. Again, it's part of customer experience. Payment initiation, payment reporting, it's the same thing as well. You can't just take your reporting engine today and take your MT 940s and translate them into CAMP, because again, 940 is less rich. You're not going to be able to put all the information of your inbound PAX 8 into an MT 940 and then translate that back into CAMP. So if you want to give your corporate customers the best experience, the way forward really is to go full ISO.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because there was going to be we've talked quite 40 minutes now. We've been talking. I'm not saying we're stopping, but I was going to have a few sort of very short, sharp questions to you. Again, I apologize. I haven't fed them to you. This is all, but I know you know the answer.
Great, I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah, well, the first one, and it's one I get, and I'll be honest. At the start, I found I struggled to answer it. What's the difference between like for like and full migration? Like for like messages and full migration?
It's the opportunities it presents. Like for like, it's when you're addressing it as a problem.
Yeah.
And it's just something that you need to do. Full migration allows you and your customers to benefit from this richer experience. So to improve your SDP rate and to provide a richer experience for your customers so they can reconcile payments easier.
Can you do a full migration by next November if you started today?
Yes.
Good.
Or no?
Yes, you can. Yeah. Talk to Kjeld, talk to me. But yes, you can do it. It's not the end of the world. If you haven't even started it, if you've only just learnt to spell ISO 2082, there is still time, isn't there? And this is, and I think these are key. These talks. And I'll be honest, and my MD hates it when I talk to customers, and they're looking at the build to buy proposition. Should I build this internally, or should I buy something off the shelf? I will explain and I'll show you how the complicated the CBPR plus mappings are. Every single field in MT has to go somewhere else, all the different options, etc., etc. But the thing that sort of sparks that light bulb is, by the way, you've got to maintain this every year. The Swift messages will change yearly, the ISO messages will change at least yearly, and the mapping rules are going to change. You've got these three things you've got to change every year, if at best. I honestly don't think you go down the build route, but I have suffixed that to a customer saying you don't have to buy my solution, but my opinion, you should be at least buying something or looking at something. And the last time we talked, I'm going to let you describe this. Talk to your vendors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we've got about just under 10 minutes left, so I was going to let you talk for basically what should I do? I'm watching this in Canada, I'm watching this in North America. What should I do now?
So the first thing that you want to do, and this touches back on what you were saying about go full migration or to use some type of tactical solution.
Yeah.
Figure it out, but don't see it as a binary choice.
Don't see it as a problem.
Because the first thing that you need to do is figure out what systems are generating payments.
Yeah.
And what you'll find is that in most banks, you're not going to have one system that's going to be generating all your payments. You're going to have one system that's going to be creating the bulk of them, 90% of them. And for that system, I'd say start engaging with the vendor of that system. Or if you have it internally, if it's something that you've built yourself, try to figure out as soon as possible what it'll take to go full ISO. But the payment system that's going to be doing 90% of your payments, figure that one out and try to do the best you can. Don't be afraid of making an investment in that one. But then you need to figure out where 10% of your other volumes are coming from. You might have some specific payments that are linked to your global markets activities. So payments that you're doing in light of securities. You might have your treasury payments that you're doing. You might have a separate application for payments that are generated by a customer that's walking into a branch, and then the branch has a back office application. You might have manual payments that your back office is going to create. You have all these different systems that are creating payments. It's not just one. Yeah. And for those, figure out what's the best approach for that. If you have a system that's going to be generating 3 payments a day, it doesn't make sense to rebuild everything. Yeah. To look at everything. There, figure out what am I going to use a tactical solution for? What am I going to do a full switch over to ISO for? And what's going to get me the optimal mix of those two? So don't see it as a binary choice.
Yeah.
See the shades of gray in between them. But the focus really needs to be on that core solution, on the one that's generating 90% of the payments, and figure out what you can do with the timeline you have available, and let's face it, with the constrained budgets that are available today.
Okay. I mean, from my perspective, surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with as much knowledge. There is a lot of knowledge out there. I know Deutsche Bank, I know NatWest are doing quite a few ISO 2082 webinars. They're not one of those webinars where look how great we are. It's just giving some very useful advice. I am always available to talk about this. I'm not going to give you every single solution because nobody knows every single solution. but I will always make myself available. If someone contacts me in LinkedIn, I'll always make myself available to give some advice. And if you've got the money, you've got the time, speak to this man that I'm talking to now, because hopefully you can tell in these 40 minutes he knows a lot and he speaks to a lot of people.
I'm very happy to have I'm very happy to have a chat with everyone. So reach out to me over LinkedIn or on this platform, and happy to have a discussion with you.
Yeah. We're going to take this offline and talk about this payment software that's going to check all the cities and countries and do the analytics, and then we'll go and look at a private island to buy after that.
The maybe last thing that I want to share, because you mentioned some great sources of information.
Oh yes, please, more. Yeah.
One last one that I can strongly recommend is Swift. So Swift Smart is a module within the closed area of Swift. So go to Swift Smart. They have some great learning curricula about ISO 20022, about the messaging, really ranging from top level, what's the business value in this, all the way up to specificities of messages. So, I can't recommend Swift Smart enough, and to really start figuring out what you need to do and what the specificities are of the messaging as soon as possible. So I want to plug that as well.
I tell you what, I couldn't agree more, but you said the word specific. See, I can't even do it. You said that twice in one sentence, and English is not even your first language. So I just said, guy's amazing. We're nearly out of time. Any closing thoughts, Kjeld?
No, I think we covered most of it. So I think
we fixed it all.
I want to come back to what I said first. Don't see it as a problem. See it as an opportunity. I know it's a little bit of a sales pitch. It's all good news. You might see it as a problem, but see through the clouds. See what it can lead to in the long run, and don't be afraid to make an investment to get to the place where you want to be in 5 or 10 years.
I echo those thoughts, especially around. Look at it as steps. It's not the end next year. It's not the end in 3 years. Keep making it better because you can. And as I said, there's no such thing as stupid questions. Don't think you should know it by now. If you have a question, ask it. If people are mean to you and said you should already know this, that's on them. That's not on you. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I do appreciate your time. As Kjeld said, you can contact either one of us. We'll always be happy to talk. And thank you very much for your time today. You've been amazing as always.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Okay. And thank you, Payments Canada, for making this happen. I will sign off. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.